Let's go.
Hi, welcome to Lunchtime Talks, the Business Breakfast Briefers. I'm Mark Owen, and each week I invite a panel of business experts to review the modern newspapers, find out what's happened in their own individual business, their own individual business sector, and finally, what's caught their eye in this week's punchline. But before I start, I'd just like to thank our fantastic sponsors, Hazelwood's Accountants and Business Advisors, and we couldn't do the show without them. Okay, let's meet the panel. Today we've got Glenn Griffin. He's the CEO of Infostar UK Limited. It's an IT infrastructure expert company based in Gloucestershire. He's got 70 staff and a turnover around 8 million. And we'll find out all about the company and some of the threats that we're facing as well. We got Rob Webber. He's the CEO of Gloucester Rugby Charitable Foundation. He's been in post a year, and we'll find out all about that and the great work that they're doing here as well. We got Wayne Appleby. He's the MD of Appleby Estate Agents. He's been going for like 6 years. He's got 4 staff. And find out from him the moving and shaking of the housing market. So he's an expert in that. So we'll find out all about that. And last but not least, my very good friend, Nick Brodie. He's the MD of Avenue Cars. He's the chair of the Pied Piper. He's also the chair of the Gloucester Rugby Charitable Foundation as well. Ooh, and Kazoo's gone bust. Evans Hatchett's gone closing as well, closing all over the place. We'll find out the latest stuff in the car market from Nick. Okay, let's go and see what's making the headlines, courtesy of the BBC. Here we go. We've got obviously that it's all leading with with Trump today. The Times: Trump found guilty in hush money trial. The Mirror: historic trial verdict. Trump guilty. The Eye: guilty. The Daily Star: I love this one. Orange man baby guilty on all counts. You been tangoed. The Guardian: pressure on Starmer to end purge of Labour left. The Daily Express: explodes splits in Labour ranks. The Financial Times: voters brace for tax increases despite assurances from Labour and Tories. The Metro: cold-blooded monster. The Daily Mail: cancer patients to get tailored vaccines. And that's the roundup of the papers. So let's go over to you first, Nick. I'd like to talk about Donald Trump.
I know you do.
It's a massive story. It's a historical story, and we've got it here today. So,
I know
what do
you do. I got a text at midnight last night that said to me, Nick, can we talk about Trump? The tycoon American, well, what do we call him? There's a few names they call him. Tangoed is one. But my God, when you read about him and the history of him and what he's done, what he's achieved at 77 years old, that's how old he is. Some of the facts on this man are quite incredible. I mean, he raged all the time. I mean, he's not frightened of getting involved with money laundering. I don't think he's frightened of getting with prostitutes. He'll do anything, this guy, won't he? Will he get back into Paris? One question you're going to ask, we'll discuss later. Some of the interesting points: 34 counts he's got charged with. 34 counts. One interesting point, which is in the American governance, which I find quite interesting, that what they say that when or within the government, the American president, even if he's convicted, he can still actually act as the president, even if he's behind bars.
That's exactly right. Yeah, so he still could actually be president. I find what's really interesting in that is he was convicted of 40 counts, all 34. He was convicted of.
Yeah,
and they'll still vote for him. It's quite incredible, isn't it? Really, guys. I'm just going to quickly go around the panel and ask you all whether he is going to win. Right? We can go back to this later on, but what do you think, Glenn? Will Trump be the next president?
He's made it this far, and I'm surprised, but he could surprise us and be president again.
Rob, yes or no? Will he be the next president?
I hope for the sanity of the whole of the United States of America and the world, he is not. So I'm gonna be positive and say no. I think this is a step too far.
Okay, Wayne.
I think actually yes. I think he will be. I think stories like this give him more trajectory for his image, and it just gives him more publicity, doesn't it?
It does. Yeah, it does indeed. And Nick, what about yourself?
I don't think he'll quite get this over the line. I don't. I mean, he's blaming everybody now. Biden, he's actually saying now that this is a stunt by Joe Biden's administration to nail him. I mean, he's blaming everybody. He's even got this porn star prostitute in here, and she's giving him stories. I mean, this man has done about everything wrong in life, isn't he? And he's going to lead the world.
Thing is, right? It doesn't matter that he slept with a prostitute. He's not. Well, she's not a prostitute. She's a porn star. To just put it
Right,
into
yeah.
context, really.
But
You know,
she
so
sat on the, but she sat on the bed with him with his underpants on, and it all goes on in the right here. So it's quite interesting.
well,
porn
she
star.
spanked. She spanked him as well, which is
Yes,
well,
yes, yes.
some people like that kind of stuff. But anyway, let's move on. Okay, so let's go over to you, Rob. What have you picked out from the papers today?
So the one that sort of resonated most with kind of our work was the UK household where no adult within that household has ever worked has hit a 12-year high, which is quite shocking, really, when you think about it. When we've got a bit of an economic crisis, poverty levels growing, and we seem to have even more growing rates of people within households, and Gloucester being on that trend as well, with numbers rising of youngsters and sort of people aged 50 to 64. It's really kind of hitting local markets. It's hitting the economy, it's hitting the individuals, it's hitting poverty levels, it's hitting the societies that they're living in. So to sort of to read that it's getting worse, the number of children and youngsters that are not in employment, education, or training is rising. It's hit a 9-year high. It's up to 900,000 youngsters nationally. And obviously, there's been a lot of talk recently about bringing back national service, whether that would become a way to engage people and bring them back into the workforce. Which I highly disagree. I think it would just delay the inevitable. And there's a suggestion at the moment of to fund the national service changes, that they will remove and divert some of the funding from some of the alternative learning provisions, which are so successful locally in Gloucestershire. We run some of them ourselves. It's just a real concern for me to see these sort of suggestions of removing some alternative education provisions. I think it's something that we need to do more of, not less, and provide more.
So what you're saying, that they take away some of the funding that goes to other
yeah, so they
yeah,
so in the paper they're seeking to address worklessness with this pledge to introduce national service for 18-year-olds. However, experts are saying that the scheme is going to be funded by diverting cash from other programs that are helping economically inactive people get back into the labour force. So they're going to look to fund it by removing funding from some of the programs that have propped up the unemployment and supported the unemployment market for many, many years, and have been very, very successful. It just seems to me like a really short-sighted decision to, what I believe, just gain some national news stories by bringing back national service. I think we need to look closer at the communities and try and remove some of the barriers and provide a different way of learning for a lot of kids that we experience. It's just, there's nothing wrong with the mainstream education system. It supports millions of children around the country every day. However, there are a percentage of children that do not fit in that style of learning. So forcing them to pick up a rifle and or to learn to be part of the army, whilst I understand the sort of softer skills that they will learn, I think there's better ways to do it.
Okay, thanks ever so much for that, Rob. We're going to go over to Glenn. Obviously, Glenn, you're an ex-serviceman like myself. Very quickly, do you think that this, sending kids to military service is a good idea? Before we get onto your story.
Do I think it's a good idea? I think it could be a good idea if it's implemented properly. I think the forces are, there's not enough people in the forces anymore. They're struggling to recruit enough people for the forces. Bringing national service in, is it compulsory? Is it not? Where are they going to get the people to train everybody properly? It's got to be well thought out. It's got to be well understood. It's got to include the right people. You can't force people to join, because we've got a lot of veterans in this country who end up on the streets as well. So, generally, we have to look after everybody we bring into something like that and do it properly. We can't just discard them along the way. And, this country has a great heritage with its forces. And I think most of the countries support that. So let's see something done properly this time and look to the future, really, because we probably might need it as well.
Just,
I mean,
just
also,
to add to that,
that
just to add to that, Mark,
the-
sorry. I think key point that Glenn raises is it needs to be people's decisions. We have to provide opportunities for people and let them decide. A lot of these youngsters are not out of work because they want to be. It's because they don't have the opportunity within that community, or they're stuck in a poverty cycle. So bringing back if it's a compulsory national service, I think will be really detrimental to a large number of communities. It's got to
I
be
think
an opportunity.
that's really important, Rob, because the people that join are a community and they're inclusive with everybody joining. What about the ones that don't, and what would you do to help them? So this is a national problem that needs to be well thought out, not just a vote winner for whichever party wants to win votes.
Great.
But win votes by sorting all of these other issues out around the country.
Okay, thanks so much for that. Glenn, what story have you picked out from the papers? Just very quick, you've got around 30 seconds left now.
I've got a great one. I love this, and it'll be quick. Elderly alerts make use of AI. I think this is brilliant because everyone's worried about AI. They're worried about people being tracked and everything else. So somebody's come up with an idea where in a household, somebody turns the lights on at this time, they turn the kettle on at this time, they turn the TV on at this time. If it doesn't happen at those times, roughly puts an alert out saying there's something potentially wrong with a person, be that young, old, whatever, and sends an alert to one of their relatives or carers. So I think that is a great use of AI. It's not tracking people, it's making their lives better and making people more assured that their relatives are, still around, walking about, not lying on the floor in pain or suffering. And for me, my mother is elderly now, and I think that's a great use of AI, positive things.
Okay, thanks so much for that, Glenn. Couldn't agree with you more. Okay, Wayne, great to have you on the show. Thanks for coming along.
Thank you.
What have you picked out from the papers today, please, mate?
So I wasn't aware of this actually, to be honest. And I know you've wrote about it quite a bit about the BT OpenReach switching off the analog and ISDN phone lines by 2027. I think apparently originally it was meant to be by next year, but I think there's a transitional period that's going to take some time. But yeah, I'm intrigued by that actually. It's quite interesting because I think it links to a lot of other stuff, doesn't it? Not just a landline, your traditional landline phone.
No, that's right. It's lifts. It's everything really. You don't even think about you get into a lift and it's not going to work anymore. As in the emergency telephone someone. The lift doesn't work. You won't be able to get hold of anybody. So it's all about SIMs now and things like that. Have you got any other stories for us, Wayne?
Yes, the other one that I was looking at also, and again, this is to do with technology as well, really about contactless payments, and contactless payments keep rising. I went into a restaurant the other day and paid for a drink or something, and they didn't want to take any cash, and I wondered, is that kind of it goes into something else really? Is that kind of a legal thing, or they just don't want to take it? Because if you only had cash and you didn't want to spend on your card, what are you going to do? I thought that was a bit sort of, we're not taking cash, and that was it. So
Well, a lot of it nowadays is down to banking. And let's be honest, there aren't the local banks anymore, the local branches. So you've got necessarily got all this cash. It's about security as well, and
yeah,
nowhere to put the money. I mean, you put everything on a card. There's a fee for that every time you pay for the card as well, isn't there? So by collecting everything on, by not having cash, it's both ways, isn't it? But I still like to have cash anyway. No, it's a great story. Thanks for picking that one up. Nick, let's go over to you. Thanks ever so much for clearing the papers. Great stuff there. Nick, let's talk about the car market, mate. You've obviously been running Avenue Cars course how long have you been doing it now?
Avenue 36 years.
Okay, and what's the market like at this particular moment?
The marketplace, we are in a very difficult position at the minute in many areas. Obviously, the effect of COVID is now kicking in still again. But we've got, as you know, I discussed it with you before, at the end of last year, we had a price crash, we had a market crash in used car prices, which there was no need for. Nobody can explain what happened. The knock-on effect of that is quite huge. The industry itself is changing a lot. We have massive changes, as in some of the big groups are doing very well, but really and truly the marketplace is stressed. We have Cazoo, we spoke about earlier, has gone under. Huge, never made any money. But there is a plus with Cazoo going under, and I'll explain why. Auto Trader, as you know, have just reported their £349 million profit. Auto Trader will now have competition with Cazoo. They're going to go into that market, which will help us because they're controlling the market. The big groups are now changing their used car sites. They're shutting loads. There's lots of big shutdowns at the moment, and this is because we have not got the availability of used cars in the marketplace. That reason is because the manufacturers are now starting to produce cars, but they're not selling them. We're not getting the used cars in the market. You've got Constellation, which actually own We Buy Any Car, Cinch, and British Car Auctions. They are certainly controlling the market and taking control of the volume of cars taken out of the market where we would see. So massive impact everywhere. You've seen in Gloucester, Evans Horshaw's gone, used car supermarket. Evans Horshaw have decided that they are going to sell some off, and they are going to rebrand. Sittler Group again are rebranding. Inchcape have shut 8. Peter Vardy shut some dealerships. And on it goes. I mean, the Evans Horshaw in particular, 9 sites are shutting and the 7 car store pads. So the reason behind this, and speaking to some of them, is we can't get the volume of used cars. Volume of used cars is not coming through, especially price range cars up to sort of 10, 12 grand. And that is a problem. We have a used car issue, and buying the vehicles is a major problem.
Right. And are the prices still holding up? At one point, they were massively through the roof.
Very much so holding up. And I would say under 12 grand, under 15 grand, yes. Over that, we are seeing a definite drop in prices continually. But price range vehicles you can get and you can buy at the moment.
Okay. Just very quickly, wearing your Pied Piper hat, you're wearing your Pied Piper hat, you've got a big motor show coming along. Do you want to give that a quick plug, 30 seconds?
Yeah, absolutely. So the 9th of June, or it would have been our 15th year if it wasn't for COVID. It's our 14th year at Hindman Court Gardens, the Pied Piper Car Show, Classic Cars and Gardens. As you know, if you, Mark, you've been there, Hindman Court is amazing. The gardens, 40 acres, are stunning. We have over 350 classic cars booked in already, looking like we might get over 400 cars. We've got everything from roses for grandmum to see. We've got cars everywhere. We've got family things to do, bars, food, steam trains, lorries, you name it, we've got it. It's going to be a cracking year again, weather permitting, of course. One thing we can't organise. But yeah, looking forward to it. And Pied Piper does well to help the sick and disabled children of our county. So yeah, good. It's going to be a good day.
It's a fantastic day. It's one of my favourite days of the year. Unfortunately, I can't make it this year, but I'll be in Cyprus. Anyway, thanks ever so much for that. Okay, Rob, thanks ever so much for joining us today. Rob, tell us a bit more about the Gloucester Rugby Charitable Foundation, please. How long has it been?
So 2016 was when the charity was set up. We're essentially the charitable arm of Gloucester Rugby Club. So our mission is to change people's lives through rugby. We genuinely believe that sport, and in particular our sport of rugby, and the pride and passion that people have for the Cherry and Whites and for Kingsholm, can create systemic change in certain societies and support people. So our big focus is using that power of sport to change people's lives. We provide rugby-based programs for children with physical, mental, social disabilities and difficulties. We get people from underrepresented groups into playing rugby, coaching, etc., etc. We have an education program, as I talked about earlier, in terms of helping and supporting communities that are suffering from unemployment back into the workplace, back into employment, back into training, through some sort of alternative living learning provision. Have a wellbeing strand that sort of supports veterans with PTSD or social isolation, young children who are suffering from the rising obesity crisis and mental health crisis. And then something that we're also incredibly proud of is our support for Ed Slater and the 4Ed Fund, in which we raise funds to remove financial barriers that motor neuron disease creates for families. There's some crazy stats like a wheel for a wheelchair of somebody with MND costs about £3,000, and there's no private funding available for that. The families have to fund that themselves. There's little grants here or there. We're there to help remove some of those financial barriers. So we put wet rooms in for people and buy vital equipment and pay for them to go on that adapted lifetime holiday to Disney World if they need to. So we are grant giving and support families through our 4Ed Fund.
It's absolutely fantastic work that you're doing there as well. And how do we get in touch with you, and how do we get involved?
So there's a few ways. We launched a new website a couple of weeks back, gloucesterrugbyfoundation.org. It's a place where everybody, if you need support and you're looking for our programs and you want to book because you need help and you need us, there's information there. If you want to get involved in terms of donating, joining our charitable lottery, supporting the work financially, you have the options there. If you're a business and you have a social value angle and you want to deliver kind of your ESG strategy, we're here to support that. We can do everything from volunteering through to program sponsorship and everything else. And all of our contact details are on the website. If you want to email us directly, it's foundation@gloucesterrugby.co.uk.
Okay, fantastic. Thanks ever so much for putting us on that. Okay, let's go over to you, Glenn. Glenn, Infostar, do you want to tell us all about the business, please, mate? Because we've been going quite a while, 70 staff. Just a quick overview of it. And
I've been in the sort of arena for about 38 years now, starting at 16. And it's a small business. We've been going about 7 years now. We work in the IT industry. We're from an NVIDIA partner, which is great with all the rise of AI and things like that. And things are going well. We've got a lot of ex-forces in our teams, which we highly support, and we do quite a lot of charitable things as well. I will mention alpacas because my team will expect me to. So we've got some alpacas for a charity in Cornwall, which is quite nice. But generally, the IT industry at the moment is an exciting place to be, especially with the Golden Valley development and things like that coming. So cyber in Gloucestershire is on the up. We've got a great team. We're very passionate about it. We've got developers in there. We've got project managers, delivery managers working in various different projects across the county and across the UK as well.
okay, can you tell us what the Scalextric is behind it? Why is that significant?
I'll move out of the way. So the Scalextric's a great example of, I think, teaching people how to program in artificial intelligence. So as simple as I can make it, over a 6-month period, two of my team got a Scalextric's car and programmed it to go around that track as quickly as possible. And then we go to shows around the country, like DESI down in London. We go to the air shows with the RAF. It went to Fairford, and people try to be the AI car. And I think this is a really good example of where universities or colleges in the future could use this and put teams against each other to race AI cars, or even people to race them, and then compare different things. I think it's a learning experience that's not causing anybody any problems and quite enjoyable.
Okay, and who normally wins?
Well, the AI car at the time, nobody can beat it. 20 laps in 40 seconds, that can do. Nobody can beat it at all. We've never seen anyone beat it. And we've gone through about 70 cars so far. They burn out quite quickly. So it's quite a different thing, really. And I think use of AI where people don't get too worried about it.
Okay, no, thanks ever so much for that, Glenn. I'm just going to quickly ask everybody. Nick, I gather you were a Scale Electric fan. You look like a Scale Electric fan.
Was. I've even got 2 cars on my side in the office. My old scale electric cars, yeah.
That's probably what got you into motor dealers. Anyway,
Thanks.
let's go over to you, Wayne. Thanks ever so much, Wayne. Great to have you here. Okay, let's talk about Appleby. How long have you been trading now?
So this year be our 6th year in business. I've been an estate agent for about 14 years, but 6 years on my own.
Okay, was it tough starting off when you first started on your own, or because
Yes,
just around the pandemic start time, wasn't it?
it was the end of 2018. The difficult it was a big task I knew the job, but nobody knew me. And it's kind of trying to build that brand. And over the 6 years, I think we're only just starting now, really, if that makes any sense, because it's now a bit more recognized than it was, say, 6 years ago.
And is it predominantly sort of houses you sell and lettings, or is it a mix of both?
Yeah, we're predominantly residential sales. We do a little bit of commercial, but yeah, predominantly residential sales. Yeah.
Because it's a cutthroat. You're not being funny. There are lots and lots of businesses out there. Estate agents. It's a bit of a cutthroat business, isn't it?
It is, yeah, it is. There's a lot of estate agents, and more so now, people going down the self-employed route. There's an American franchise that's out, and people are going down that route as a platform to do the business on their own. I think in the last, say, between 5 and 10 years, the change of people now going into an estate agent office is no more, really, or few and far between. 95% of people now search for a property online. I'm not sure whether that resonates with Nick's business as well, and whether or not that has a bearing on people just searching online rather than going to a forecourt, which is why these online companies have the majority share, I suppose. But the idea for me really was that I wanted to do something that was a bit different, as in hybrid. And what I mean by that is that I haven't got a high street office. I'm based in Hynham on the business centre. So we've got an office that we work from and our base, and it's a nice area to be for the business we cover in the whole of Gloucestershire. But the idea also was to keep the overheads low. There's a lot of competition, so you have to be competitive on what you're charging, because most people obviously are driven by what you charge them to sell their house. And this goes back, as I said, a few years ago, when a lot of the online agencies came out, and they kind of shook the market up a bit. There was a bit more choice. They were charging less, which means that the high street agents had to align with that. And the only way they could do that really was charge less.
Okay, and what is the market like at the moment? Because I hear pretty good stuff, actually, especially in Gloucester.
Yeah, I mean, in the last, if we go post-COVID, it was a good time to be an estate agent. The market was a supply and demand situation. There wasn't enough of property on the market. We could sell. It was like you could sell a house overnight almost. You had 5 buyers waiting for one house at one point. So it kind of drove the prices up in the last 3 or 4 years, on average by about 15%. And there are a few factors for that. The rates, well, the borrowing has been cheap for the last sort of 10 years. You had your mortgage rates at 1-2%. Stamp duty holidays, that triggered a big move in the market. The average stamp, say, was around 5,000 on a £300,000 house. A lot of people who couldn't have afforded to move decided to move because they didn't have to pay the stamp duty. So you did have a bit of the market, that 20% of the market that moved that weren't going to move originally. It was based on the fact that it was cheap to borrow, and the stamp duty allowed them to buy a house that they couldn't maybe afford before. So yeah, it's been an interesting time. The mortgage rates have since gone up, so that's kind of slowed the pace of the market. I think it also breeds apprehension. With the election coming up, people thinking, "Oh, should we sit tight? Should we do this? Should we do that?" But overall, the price, if you go back 5 years, on average, the market's raised by about 15% in our area. It's probably dipped slightly by about 5%, but it's still higher than what it was. You know, the media will give you what what they want you to hear, really, and the doom and gloom stories. But yeah, overall, it's still quite buoyant at the moment. It's been quite busy in the last month, really.
Okay, thanks
Oh,
ever
just-
so much.
Well,
Yes, sir.
Wayne's saying is the actual internet changed everything. 36 years ago, when Having Your Car started, it was a double-page magazine, but now everything is done online. People look at all the cars online, look at houses online. Wayne's right. You know, the internet drives a lot of, well, I would say for us, 60% of our sales is all online, and they make appointments. 60, 70%. It's high. It's very high.
So a lot of people don't need an office anymore.
Well, I just did a little story. I bought my last car, Nick. I'd be a good customer for you, actually. I without even driving it.
Well,
Not many people do that anymore.
well, that goes to tell. Anyway, unfortunately, we're running out of time, guys. We're going to do the pick of the punchlines. So let's start with you, Glenn. What have you picked out from? We've got less than a minute each, so let's rattle through them if you don't mind. So, Glenn, what have you picked out from this week's punchline, please?
I think you've got a story on retailers face growing cyber threat. And I think this is really important. We supply a service to look at companies and how their, how their payment terminals and their Wi-Fi is secure. I think with the rise of cyber theft and things like that, it's really important. So if a plug for our company is we can do surveys and we can look at any cyber issues you might have. So I'll leave it there. But that's a really important one at the moment. And being compliant as well with exactly what you're saying earlier with cards and card payments. It's in the terms and conditions about what the Wi-Fi standards should be and what the terminals have got to do and the security with them. So you have to be really careful. You can't just, have insecure IT. It's really important to be careful.
Get a card and then just stick it in there and sell it. You've got to need the IT security behind
You
it.
need the security behind it, and if people can start to get onto your systems and look at information, read information, steal information, you're very vulnerable, and so are your customers. With GDPR and everything else, it's a big thing these days. So
Okay.
OC security really important. Thank you.
Okay, thanks so much for that. Glenn, sorry. Rob, let's go over to you. What have you picked out from this week's punchline, please?
Yeah, so I picked out the dreadful story of Jules Room from Cheltenham, who took his own life in 2022, and parents believe social media had a big part to play and are advocating and lobbying for parental access legally to children of a certain age social media accounts to keep them safe. I think with the rise in negative impact on mental health and body confidence and everything else that the children are going through, and we know stats say just short of 40% of children aged 8 to 12 are using social media platforms near constantly, which is the terrifying bit, near constantly. I think as a father myself, when my daughter is old enough to have access to social media, I would like to have access and a view over it, not to control it, not to do anything like that, but just to keep people safe. It's being abused by a lot of people, and I think well done to Ellen and the family. I think keep pushing. I think it's the right thing to do. We need to keep our children safe online.
Terribly tragic story as well. Thanks ever so much for that, Rob, and wonderful that the work they're trying to do there in very difficult times. Okay, Wayne, I'm going to go back over to you. What have you picked out for this week's punchline? Unfortunately, you got around 30 odd seconds.
Right. So this was actually last week in the punchline, but it was promotion agreements, which we also know as option agreements. It's whereby if you have say for a piece of land for sale, as an example, you can agree an agreement with the current owner that, subject to you obtaining planning permission, that you can actually buy a piece of land verbally without actually having to pay for it until such time you get the planning permission, and then you agree a price before, but then obviously after, once you get the planning, you can do the deal.
Okay, right. I don't really understand that at all. Thanks, Andrew. That's great. You made more time in
Sorry.
going for it again. Nick, what have you picked out from this week's punchline, please?
Well, you done it, Mark. I love the article you did on the car show at Honda Court, which I thought was amazing. And in particular, in the photographs, you'll see that the Birkin Racer will be there, which is one of the only cars in the world, which will be at Honda Court in front of the house on the day.
Okay, that's unfortunately all we've got time for today, guys. Thanks ever so much to my fantastic panel for joining us today. Our wonderful sponsors at Hazelwood's Accountants and Business Advisors. And thank you all for watching the show. I hope you enjoyed it. And don't forget, it's all in the punchline. We'll see you next week. Bye.